This morning comes from the Gospel of Luke, and it's the familiar story of an itty-bitty man who some of us have learned about in Sunday school, named Zacchaeus. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through it. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not because he was so short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see Jesus, because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to that place, he looked up and said to Zacchaeus, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, "He has gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner." Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." Then Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. And the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost." The Gospel of the Lord. Oh, we don't say that at this service, do we? Okay, let us pray. God, may your words only be spoken and your words only heard, and we ask this all for your love's precious sake. Amen. Kids Chapel, and that is the handsome young Ben, the lovely Miss Chris, and it looks like it's going to be a great day in Kids Chapel, as it so often is. Well, the young woman was visiting an orphanage, and as she walked up the steps of the orphanage, she noticed a pile of newspaper crumpled up on the steps. Thinking that she would do her good deed, pick up that newspaper, throw it in the garbage, she reaches down to pick it up, and she notices that this ball of newspaper is heavier than she expected. And as she looks inside, she finds a discarded baby girl, just born, still alive, but barely so. So she unwraps the newspaper and holds the baby tight, carries it into the orphanage. The orphanage is the Sisters of Charity. And the young woman is there to see Mother Teresa. She's had an appointment to see Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa, as it turns out, is delayed. She had to bail a couple young ladies out of jail, a couple young prostitutes out of jail, where she was going to bring them back, that they could help at the orphanage, help them take care of the babies. Mother Teresa finally does come back. In the meantime, this young woman who is to meet with her just sets about doing the work that is to be done there. She bathes these little infants, these tiny little ones. She holds them, she sings to them, and she feels like she's in her element. Mother Teresa finally shows up. They go into this tiny little room. They meet. Not long after that, they find themselves engaged in this deep and intimate conversation, extremely invigorating. And that hasn't gone on for too long when all of a sudden this couple bursts in. This is in New Delhi, India. This couple bursts in, and it's clear from their size, the amount of perfume they're wearing, the bling that they're covered in. The man has rings on all the fingers and in each of his hands, that this is a very rich couple. And they take no notice of the meeting, but the man comes in and forcibly stands Mother Teresa up, puts her up against the wall. The woman comes over and stands next to her. They shove the camera in the young woman's hand and say, "Take a picture of us." When Mother Teresa, who is bent over with osteoporosis and her neck is crooked down, when she's not looking up properly, the woman chides Mother Teresa and actually physically reaches her hand under Mother Teresa's chin to force her face up so they get the picture right. And then when the picture's taken, they leave as quickly as they came, no thanks to anybody, no acknowledgement of anything. And then this young woman and Mother Teresa sit down again, and Mother Teresa continues the conversation just as if nothing had happened, picks up just where they left off. But the young woman is livid. I mean, her heart is pulsing in her ears, her blood pressure's gone sky high, and she says she just can't concentrate on anything that happens after that because she's so angry. Well, that is another one of Lynn Twist's stories. That story can also be found in her book, The Soul of Money, another one of those stories that deeply moved me. And part of the reason that story moves me so much is that it actually doesn't end there. Because Lynn Twist from there, still trying to deal with this experience, and then a few weeks after that, she gets a letter from Mother Teresa. And in this letter, Mother Teresa admonishes her and says, it's clear you were really good with the poor, but the rich are just as needy as the poor people are, and you showed them no compassion. And so she says, and this is what Mother Teresa actually says in the letter. The vicious cycle of poverty, Mother Teresa said, has been clearly articulated and is widely known. What is less obvious and goes almost completely unacknowledged is the vicious cycle of wealth. There is no recognition of the trap that wealth so often is, and the suffering of the wealthy, the loneliness, the isolation, the hardening of the heart, the hunger and poverty of the soul that can come with the burden of wealth. She said that she, Lynn Twist, had extended little or no compassion to the strong, the powerful, and the wealthy, while they need as much compassion as anybody else. Mother Teresa's profound insight then was that the rich, the wealthy, are as needy as anybody else. And the truth is this morning, I expect we know that, and I expect we know that from personal experience. As wealthy people, I expect each and every one of us from personal experience knows something about the vicious cycle of wealth. I expect we know something about the loneliness that this lifestyle, that this standard of living so often brings, the relational hit that we so often take just to live life at this pace. I just can't tell you how many wives over the years have just come in and said, I'm so lonely. I'm just so lonely. And the interesting thing is that in recent years, I have heard more and more men say the same thing. Men would never say that kind of thing, but I just think the loneliness has come to be so profound that they don't know what to do with it anymore. We know at least a little bit of something about the pressure that is inherent in the lifestyles that we live. Having all the stuff that we have. It's not just getting the stuff, there's enough pressure in that, and then getting more stuff, and then keeping ahead of everybody else, and keeping the latest and greatest, and keeping up with the styles, but it's cleaning the stuff we have, and maintaining the stuff we have, and ensuring the stuff we have, and fixing the stuff that we have, and then getting rid of the stuff that we have when we no longer use the stuff that we have. There's a ton of pressure built into this lifestyle, and we know the anxiety that comes from worrying about all this stuff, and we know the anger and harsh words that can flow so easily out of the stresses that we carry. And we know how it is that people who have everything they ever wanted, and sometimes more than we ever wanted, can still feel so empty inside. Because things are never going to fill that emptiness up. And so I think if I were a betting man, I'd bet each and every person here knows a little bit of something, and some of us might know a lot, about the vicious cycle of wealth. One of the most troubling of all statistics, and one of these Sundays we're going to talk about this because I think we have to. One of the most troubling of all statistics are the suicide rates. Suicide rates are going sky high. Now, more people die from suicide in a year than die from car accidents. And the area that's really going through the roof are men ages 50 to 60. And this escalation is too new for people to really know what's happening, but they expect that it's tied into loneliness and to the economic pressures that we feel when we're used to performing at such a high level, but everything seems to be collapsing around us. It's very, very troubling, and it points to that emptiness of soul that has come to be such a part of our culture. Well, another person who knew something about the vicious cycle of wealth was Zacchaeus. And Zacchaeus was very much caught up in that vicious cycle of wealth. Zacchaeus was a man who had betrayed his own people in working for the Roman government, who enslaved and oppressed the Jews. He had betrayed his own people. And he did so to make money, and lots of it. As a tax collector, he charged people as much money as he could to support the Roman Empire's military operations, but also to line his own pockets with as much stuff as he could get. So in short, Zacchaeus was a man who clearly cared about things more than money. He was a man who gave up on his faith in God and put his faith in the might of the empire. He put his faith in the materialistic culture of his day. He was a man who forsook his own soul. And he did so that he could have more and more money. But Zacchaeus was also a man who knew the power of Jesus Christ to deliver him from the vicious cycle of wealth. And so And we can see that for Zacchaeus, his lifestyle, this lifestyle in the vicious cycle of wealth, it's not working for him. It wasn't working any better for him than it does for us. And we can see that in the way that he has such great interest in Jesus and the message of Jesus and the way that he responds to Jesus. And so when Jesus comes to Zacchaeus' house, Zacchaeus says, and he hears the message of Jesus, and he realizes how wrong what a wrong direction he's taken in the course of his life in the pursuit of more and more and more in the sort of rampant materialism that has overtaken him. He says, Lord, I'll give away half of all I have. Anybody I've done wrong by in this acquisition of wealth, I'll give them back 4 times as much as I've taken from them. And when Jesus hears that, Jesus says, today, salvation has come to this house. It's a fascinating thing. Think with me about this for a moment. I don't know if you ever thought about this, but all the great religions of the world, all have certain practices that we engage in to help us to become more mindful and conscious of how we're living so that we can be more compassionate, so that we can live better lives. One of the ways with which a great many of us are familiar and a great many of us participate and a great many of us think is cool is through watching our breathing, right? I mean, that's one of those disciplines. You learn how to watch, you breathe, and this is practiced as a religious experience to make us more mindful. And that's good as far as it goes. But I want to suggest another religious practice that I think can transform your life on a far greater level than just watching your breathing, and that has the potential to have a much greater global impact. And that is not to watch our breathing, but to watch what we do with our money. And I want to suggest to you that watching what we do with our money, can be one of the most profound spiritual experiences of all, and that can transform our lives, as we began to talk about last week, virtually more than anything else can. I think that just as we know something about the vicious cycle of wealth, we also know something about what it is to be delivered from that vicious cycle of wealth, to allow Jesus to deliver us from that cycle and to establish in our life a virtuous cycle of wealth instead. So I think we also know something about the peace that passes all understanding when we stop living for things. I think we know something about what it is to have a reason and purpose for living and that fills the emptiness of our heart, the only thing that fills the emptiness of our heart. It doesn't just fill the emptiness of our heart, but that, as we talked about last week, makes our hearts sing. I think that we know something about, when we take Jesus seriously, when we listen to His words, when we live by them, I think we know something about what it is to choose people over things, to choose to love instead of just pursue a lifestyle, to slow down instead of run 100 miles an hour and make room for people in our hearts and our lives. And I think we know how good it is when we choose to love, when we choose each other over just more and more stuff. I think we know how good that can be. But that's what really raises the choice for us. Given where we live, the time and history when we live, the siren song of wealth is always calling to us. It always wants to suck us in. It always wants us to wrap us up in this vicious cycle of wealth that is so destructive on so many levels. And over against that, we come to church, as you've done this morning, and I appreciate your doing that, because I think this is part of why church is so important. We hear this call to live a different way, to not get all wrapped up in this vicious cycle of wealth, but to live a virtuous cycle of wealth. And I think this morning's gospel gives us some real specific insight as to how we do that. And we see that when Zacchaeus chooses, instead of just amassing more and more, decides to give more away. And to do so in such a way that what he does with money, and this is what we talked about last week, what he does with his money expresses the deepest values of his heart, aligns with what he really believes is most important. More specifically, I think we see this when Zacchaeus gives a percentage of his income away. Now, why a percentage? Why not just dollars? Why give a percentage of our income away? Well, I think that the reason that giving a percentage away is such a powerful practice is that when we're just given dollars, it's all too easy to feel like we're generous when we're anything but. It's all too often to believe that we've been generous when nothing could be farther than the truth, when the truth is we've just gotten more and more selfish. And what we know is, another way to say this is that the more you have, the more you want, right? I mean, and again, we all know this. And just two quick examples: the more you have, the more you want. The more I have, the more I want. Two quick examples. Consider our closets. Now, we live in a day and age where closets are as big as rooms once were in houses. We live in a day and age where closets can be bigger than the houses we saw in Haiti and Belize. I mean, and we will stand in front of our closets and we will say, our closet's full of clothes, and we will say, doggone it, I don't have anything to wear. That's exactly right. All these clothes, work clothes, casual work clothes, work around the house clothes, fishing clothes, work in the garden clothes, workout clothes, and we stand in front of all those clothes and we say, doggone it, I don't have anything to wear. I think I need more. And, fascinating statistic, only 1% of what we buy will still be in use, in active use, 6 months from when we buy it. So what that means is all these clothes we buy, and we all know this, they get pushed away to the back of our closet where we may or may not ever wear them again. There's actually a name for that. They're called closet castaways. Same thing with food. Believe it or not, people buy food. They call them cabinet castaways. You look in your cabinets, if your cabinets are anything like mine, are you going to find in those cabinets things that might have been in there for years that, we don't even know they're even in there anymore. Might not even like them, but, some of that did cause it. And so the more you have, the more you want. The more I have, the more I want. The more we stack up stuff. Here's another one. And this is a belief as any religious belief. People hold this with a fervor that rivals any fundamentalist belief. And the vicious cycle of wealth is built on this. And this belief is upgrading is good. Upgrading is necessary. And what's upgrading say? I take something that is perfectly good, works just fine, does everything I want it to do and probably more, but I got to get rid of it, pay a whole bunch more money to get something else that's probably, initially at least, just going to frustrate the heck out of me, just so I can have the latest and greatest. Now, this is my phone. I am several upgrades behind, all right? And one of the things I loved about last service is people just came up, they just all started pulling out their phones. And I thought, man, kindred spirits. This is my phone. I'm several upgrades behind. Now, do I suffer in any way, shape, or form because I have this phone? I don't think I do. This phone not only does everything I want to do, I won't do half the things this phone wants me to do. In fact, I think I could make a case based on empirical evidence. Somebody last service said, why are you making those? I said, well, I'm emphasizing these things, but I think I could make a case, try not to point. I think I can make a case out of empirical evidence and psychological research, hard evidence, that my life is actually better off with that phone. Because I'm less distracted. Because I experience life more immediately. I actually experience life. I don't experience it through a screen. Because I actually keep my human relationships human. Now, I'm not saying anything really about me. I'm just saying life that hasn't updated itself. I'm talking about the life of a dinosaur. But maybe there's some cool things about being a dinosaur. I always kind of really liked dinosaurs. I mean, sorry, I got distracted. Dinosaurs, cool word, just took me right down there. The point is, upgrading, the need to upgrade, it's just a myth. It's just a myth. I don't believe it. I don't buy it. And I hope you won't either. So the point of this is, the more you have, the more you want. And that's just the way our culture goes. And it just sucks us up. And the minute it does, we're back in that vicious cycle of wealth. So what do we do? Well, here's what I want you to consider doing. I'd like you to do it. I'd like to be that forceful, but since we're all thinking folks, consider it with me. I'd like you to consider, if you already give a percentage of your income away, up that percentage. And here's why. Let's say that 20 years ago, I made $20,000 a year. It's about right. And I gave 10% away back then. So I gave $2,000 away. I live on $18,000 a year. Let's say now I make $10,000 a year. I give $10,000 away, and now I have $90,000 left. Now I'm spending $90,000 on me. You see, I'm giving $10,000 away instead of $2,000. I feel really generous because there's more zeros. It's a bigger number. I feel like I'm being a generous person. But the fact of the matter is, I'm keeping a whole lot more in my little pie. And that's how we get the world that we have, by the way. And would I call that generous? You know, would I really call that generous? Now, if you're troubled with that, think if you were a little kid and you looked at that, and you looked at somebody who was taking, $100,000, think of it of a pie, a whole pie, and they just take this little slice and they give it to somebody else. Would they call that generous? See, kids are honest. They know how to call a spade a spade. So that's why I'm suggesting, if you give, whatever percentage, you gave 3% away before, give 4% away before. Because otherwise we deceive ourselves. We say we value generosity, we say we value these things, but what we do is we just get psyched up in this vicious cycle of wealth. It just makes us more and more selfish people, and that impacts our lives in a whole bunch of negative ways, and the world in a whole bunch of negative ways. And if you already give a percentage, we already talked about if you don't give a percentage, then what I want you to do is just pick a percentage. I don't care what the percentage is, pick a percentage. Start giving a percentage of what you have, because that's what really pleases the heart of God. But the reason it pleases the God is not because He's forcing you to do something you don't want to do, because He knows that'll break the vicious cycle of wealth in your life. That'll unleash a whole bunch of positive benefits that we just talked about. So pick a percentage. If you're having trouble doing that, let me help you with that. All right? The median income in our country right now is about $50,000 a year. This area, that's eclipsed. But about $50,000 a year, that's the average income. People who make about $50,000 a year give on average 6% of their income away. All right, so they give about 6% of their income away. Now, as that number goes up, people give less and less away. People who make what people in our area make generally give about 2 or 3% away. But if you just want to be average, all right, just average, and in this area, people are like average. Who wants to be average? Nobody wants to be average in anything. But if you want to just settle for being average in this area, just pick the average income, just pick the average amount, and go with that. Go with 6%. Just start right off. How's that for a number? You can just, start there. But the point of the matter is, again, that's what keeps us from feeling generous when we're not really being generous, and from getting all caught up in this cycle that can be so destructive in so very many ways. Very, very practical way to do it. But if you do it, what you'll find is it releases light and life in a way that you never, and love, in a way that you never would have thought possible. What you'll find is that salvation, in the largest sense of the word, not just a spiritual word, but the word that speaks of the well-being of life in every avenue of life, you'll find that salvation comes to your house today. Now, I'm not trying to force you to do something you don't want to do. This is not about guilt or shame or blame. But it's just about being objective, mindful, conscious, looking at what we do with our money. Saying, am I really generous? Am I? Am I really living my values? Is my money really a currency of love? And I think that most people sense that something's happening in our world today. Something new. Something beautiful. I think we sense that a lot of the troubles that we're having, and we are having a lot of troubles, is birthing something. That people are becoming more aware, that people are becoming more conscious, that people want to do a better job of loving each other, of making this world a place we can all be proud of. I think we sense that. And what I'm really asking you to do is to participate in that. Let it be birthed. Let it be birthed in you, in your own heart. And so what I want to say to you is just exactly what we said last week. May our money, your money and mine, may our money bear the stamp of our soul. May it be a currency of love. May it speak our very word. Amen. Amen.